We want to ask you a question. Why do you think Nancy Pelosi is traveling again on taxpayer dollars, this time to Armenia? Is she the new Secretary of State? Last week, Azerbaijan attacked inside the country of Armenia, not along the contested border, but inside sovereign territory. And by many accounts, over 200 people were killed, civilians as well as military. Speaker Pelosi says that her trip was not actually planned around this conflict. She was speaking in Yerevan this weekend, and she said that she was there to stand in partnership with Armenia as the highest-ranking official to ever visit Armenia. But she told reporters last week that the trip was, quote, rather spontaneous when she confirmed that she was going. But then when she was there, she said this in her speech. She said, "We didn't plan this around what happened last week. This trip was planned before that. But it so happens that we come in time and person strongly condemn Azerbaijan's recent attack on Armenia." So which is it? Was it spontaneous or wasn't it? It seems to me that it was.
It literally was like 2 days later.
Yes.
Suddenly she's there after this, this, by the way, is an unprovoked attack, right? So this is actually an unprovoked attack. And then 2 days later, she's in Armenia.
Yes.
The Speaker of the House with a whole entourage.
Well, she told reporters, yes, spontaneously, I'm going to Armenia today. And then when she was there, she's like, we didn't plan this. And you just happened, it was like, I happened to be in town for this to happen.
Something doesn't smell right.
Right. Okay.
It sounds like maybe Nancy Pelosi plays like airline roulette, where she just gets on a random plane and then she shows up. She's like, oh, I'm in Armenia.
Where am I going for vacation today?
Right.
Oh, just throw it. Yeah, she's fun. She throws a dart at a map, and she's like, where am I going? Oh, Armenia. It just happens to have been attacked, and it happens to be a border state with Russia.
Like Harry and Meghan happened to be in town when the Queen passed, right? These things are a little too convenient.
Right.
All of these things. Let's not talk about the royals. Our chat room hates it. Okay.
Right.
In fact, Nancy Pelosi is the highest ranking U.S. official to ever visit Armenia. No U.S. president or vice president has ever visited. And since she is third succession to the presidency, she is, in fact, the highest ranking official to make a diplomatic visit. Maybe that is why Secretary of State Antony Blinken would not do this time when it came to talking about how America wants to divide Armenia and Russian loyalties. She said this in a speech over the weekend. Here's an expert. She says, let me just say in that regard that Armenia is at the center of this debate between democracy and autocracy with its proximity to Russia. But it's also part of our global discussion or contrast between the two. So we find this to be a perfect time to be here as to what is going on in Ukraine, their fight for freedom, as we advocate a peaceful resolution of what is happening here.
What?
So the U.S. is clearly drawing parallels between Armenia and Ukraine, saying they both are attacked countries and that it's Russia as the autocracy behind it.
Well, it's hilarious to think, first of all, what a pile of garbage, right? When you think about who's actually been supplying weapons and support to Azerbaijan, Israel, right? What does that have to do with Russia? In fact, it's the opposite of that. And they actually have Azerbaijan and Armenia have a good relationship with Moscow.
Yes.
So what is she even talking about?
I don't know. She already is telling us, though. So let's watch for this. Like, let's all just sort of mark it in our brains that the United States is going to tell us that this conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan is Russia's fault, and that it will further justify anti-Russian sentiment and whatever else it is they want, right? So you've been warned here that this is the narrative that they will use, even though clearly, yes, this is not a Russian conflict, right? Armenia is supported by Russia. In fact, Armenia has been calling on Russia as its ally per a longstanding agreement called the CSTO, the Collective Security Treaty Organization. This is their version of NATO. The United States does not want Armenia to solidify its friendship with Russia. So that's why this timely visit, right? So let's just sort of think for a second. All the airline miles that Nancy Pelosi has racked up this year for diplomacy when she is not the Secretary of State, but is behaving as such. She's been to Ukraine in May. She went to Taiwan in August, Armenia in September. Why do we have a Secretary of State exactly if she's going to do all of these things? Even Antony Blinken hasn't been to those places with this frequency. But he did have a phone call. He issued this statement here about his phone call with the president of Azerbaijan saying, yes, we welcome, a halt to recent hostilities. So he's doing something. Right? That's nice.
What was hilarious, too, the other day when we talked about Armenia last week after the attack took place, it was a tale of two comments from Antony Blinken, right? On the one hand, his comments about the unprovoked attack, right, of and Russia's aggression will not stand. Because he talked about a recent attack in August or in early September, and he said, this will not stand. You will pay for this, basically. And then Azerbaijan's attack of Armenia, it was like, maybe you guys should stop this. Like, that's pretty nice. Like, really? You put them on the same, why aren't you putting them on the same scale here? Like, what's the difference? Why do you get to pick and choose which ones you want to support and which ones you don't?
Maybe I should stop this. You guys should stop it.
Oh, stop it, you guys.
Like when your kids are fighting in the back and you're like, I want you to knock that off, but I can tune it out if you're not going to. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what are the conflicts really at place here? Because it's clearly about more than a border dispute, right? Because does the United States really care about this border dispute? No,
absolutely.
They care about loyalties. But Armenia does seem to be hedging its bets. They are calling on all world powers, which absolutely you can't blame them. If someone's, harming your people, then you call in all stops, right? So they did call Prime Minister of Armenia, Pashinyan, called Russian President Putin. He called French President Emmanuel Macron. He called U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken. He called Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi. And he also called the UN Security Council. But obviously, these world powers cannot work together for a common goal of protecting Armenia. They are not friends.
Right.
So the concern of Armenians is that the government is playing both sides and will end up getting help from neither.
Yeah, it's not going to be easy when you just think about geopolitics, right? Just think about this mess. I think the Armenia story is incredibly important. And, for a lot of Americans, it'll just fly right over their heads and not really paying attention to this. I think Europeans hopefully may be paying more attention. This, to me, is the next proxy war. And you've got Iranians in northern Turkey who are being wound up by Azerbaijan, trying to get them to basically separate themselves from Turkey, causing a problem. You have Israel supplying weapons into that region. You have the support of Moscow on both sides. You have the United States and NATO now sticking its neck into Armenia, trying to solidify that partnership to create another Ukraine. It's a total shit show.
Yes. So last week we had journalist Kevork Almasian on the show, and he has been covering this conflict for a long time. He is Armenian by blood, and he is very critical of the government. He's saying, this is from an article he wrote and posted to his Facebook page today, so I'm going to give you an expert. He says that Nancy Pelosi's visit to Armenia has one goal: to assure that Pashinyan remains in power, to ensure that Armenia continues to turn towards the U.S., and to prevent any attempts to join the Eastern Bloc, to which Armenia organically belongs. That's what he believes, right? He says, I don't understand the qualifications of the Armenian speakers during these demonstrations who call for Western peace forces in the Caucasus are basically calling for Armenia's death sentence. He says, this is his prediction. Do they know that if Russia feels Armenia is moving towards demanding Western forces in this region, then it will lead to a coup in Armenia within 24 hours and Russia's occupation of all of Armenia? Do these people know that Russia prefers to include Armenia in the Russian Federation and will do so if it sees that its interests in this region are threatened? So what he's saying is an annexation like Crimea. That is a shocking prediction. The West clearly would not take kindly to that. We'd have a much bigger conflict on our hands, right? So is this extreme or is this writing on the wall?
I mean, we saw it already. We've seen it. Like, again, that's why I'm a student of history. You study these things because they repeat over and over again. And if you can either prevent them or you can prepare for them, right? 2014, we saw a coup fomented by U.S. NATO forces in Ukraine.
Well, he is saying that the Velvet Revolution of 2018 was also instigated by the deep state of the United States in Armenia, and that Pashinyan is a U.S. puppet.
Yeah, it basically says he's weak, and is not looking to secure borders, not looking to stand strong for the Armenian people, and so there probably needs to be a change in that country. And of course, if the Caucasus are threatened, this is going to be a major problem. But again, yes, of course, the United States and NATO would love nothing more than to have U.S. military presence in Armenia and setting up military bases there and using Armenia as another wedge against Russia in this region. Absolutely the case.
Yes. And we must remind you that Azerbaijan is funded by Israeli money, high-tech weapons, highly trained specialists who can use those weapons, right? And who is Israel aligned with? They're besties with the U.S., right? So we see the power alliances here. How can Azerbaijan be aligned with Israel and the United States, and the United States also come around and say to Armenia, don't be friends with Russia, we got you, but we're also friends with that side, right? Here, and also, I think we should be reminded of the Iranian role at play here. And again, I'm going to let Kevork Almasian explain it to us. This was from his piece last week on this show.
Russia cannot also tolerate losing Armenia in that region. They're trying to regather the former Soviet Union countries, at least internally, in order to be part of any economic projects in the Eurasian side or in the CSTO, militarily speaking and economically speaking. So Russia cannot tolerate that, but also Iran cannot tolerate that. This is very important. People aren't talking much about Iran, but I think Iran is more enthusiastic to defend its borders, and they don't want to have any change in the borders.
Yes.
This is an incredibly important topic, and I saw, a lot of people in our comments saying, "Thank you for covering this topic. I want to learn more about this." And then I see other people saying, "Can we move on to another topic?" And I want to say this is an incredibly important topic, and you're not going to, if you want to watch CNN or Fox News or something where they're going to do a 3-minute segment and they're just going to whine about, they're going to.
Although, sometimes I watch the volume of our viewers, and people seem to be interested in these deep dives into global topics like this. Of course,
that's why they're here.
And you guys are still here. Thank you for staying for this.
That's because they get it nowhere else.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
So thank you guys. I love seeing all of your comments. I mean, and again, incredibly important. So thank you for being engaged and being a part of our show and subscribing to what we do here.
You are here for it, as the kids say. So some important questions, right, that we still don't have answers to, but we have very high suspicions of who's pulling the strings, who is here just to weaken who, right? Is Nancy Pelosi really coming here to pay lip service to her love of Armenian people because she loves the Kardashians, right? Who is taking advantage of the enemy having more conflicts than it can handle? Seems both sides feel like the other side is very thinly spread for proxy wars, but it's civilians who will suffer. Clayton just told you that the U.S. top general Mark Milley visited Poland this weekend, and he says that he's there to check up on Ukraine, but he's not in Ukraine. He went to prepare for what Russia may do in retaliation for losing battlefield, but he went to Poland in order to sort of peek out over the border and see what he can do, right? According to the Wall Street Journal, this is part of his motivation, right? So since this invasion, the U.S. has added roughly 10,000 troops in Europe, many based in northern NATO states that border Russia, like Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. In June, the Army said that roughly 4,700 troops from the 101st Airborne Division based out of Fort Campbell, Kentucky, would be deployed to Europe. Now, you notice not mentioned there was Armenia, but you better believe that the U.S. would love to put some troops there too.
Yes.
Based on their location. So we can see at least some part of the motivation for Nancy Pelosi just spontaneously hopping on a plane because she felt like, having some tabbouleh.
Right. That's exactly what's going to happen. I mean, you just watching it unfold, guys, right before your eyes. The United States is involved in, we have 900 military bases around the world, the United States does. Of course, they would love to add more. They would love to have more presence in this region. They would love to be in the Caucasus. They would love to be further, right up against the border with Russia. And it came at a perfect opportune moment for them, right? Ukraine was making advancements against Russian military in the eastern part of Ukraine. There were some victories there. President Putin was flying to meet with Xi Jinping. All of this happened, and then at midnight, when this is all unfolding, suddenly there's an unprovoked attack by Azerbaijan against Armenia. It's almost as if like someone planned all of this.
Yeah.
We're being played, guys. That's the problem. I just want people to understand and wake up. We are being played by these people. And if we just have this awareness about how they're playing us, then we can throw them out. We can demand new governments, but we're not going to be a party to their like games anymore. It's ridiculous.
Well, what I want to know, if Nancy's going to Taiwan and these places, like when is she going to go to Palestine and do her, like to solidify those people?
I know you've been calling for that. I would love to see that, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Come on.
I mean, again, we call out, how many times do we want to stand and call out all of the crimes against these countries attacking other countries, and yet there's never a mention of the Israeli attacks. There's none of that. There's no mention of that. It always just gets, missed somehow. I don't know why.